Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Today is the beginning. I just want to hit this the beginning of Coaches Week. So we have lined up right now 20 plus outstanding world class coaches, and we're going to be answering your questions throughout the week. If you have more questions or comments, by all means, put them up in the comment section. We can engage those directly as we go. Um, any thoughts or questions before we dive in? Anybody got anything before we go? No? Okay, let's start it off with the. Actually, before we go anywhere, I want to remind everybody like the show, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you get your email every morning. I'm a little excited. You should be excited. This is an intense moment. So let's get the first question up and rolling. This comes from Corey McGregor, also known as Winter Storm 427. And let's hit it. Here we go.
Coaches on the collective. Question for you. When did you start identifying as a coach? When did you start telling other people you were a coach? And what changed to make you identify as that? Rather than somebody who is enthusiastic about helping others or had a lot of experience in the area that you now identify as a coach. Let me know. Thanks.
Bam. So I'm going to start with Shaun. What do you think?
Okay, so I've never really considered it before, so this is kind of a live answer. I think maybe I was coaching a long time before the moment that I'm about to describe, because the moment that I'm going to describe is when it really sank in that, oh, I'm actually coaching right now. So, of course, I was coaching in the military in a bunch of different ways. And then immediately after I left Tier 1, I went to the Ontario Police College where I taught for a year as a use of force instructor. And I suppose I was coaching then as well, but I wasn't considering myself as a coach. And I'll clearly define what made me think of a coach in a sec. After use of force instruction, I went back to school, became a computer system engineer, and then I started teaching in a institution. And I was teaching day class, and then day class I was teaching night class, and then night class I then started writing a book. Somewhere in that process, I found myself between my day class and my night class, which was a time from 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I would have time to myself where I'd be eating my dinner before I'd start teaching my night class. And I just eat my dinner right at my server so I could set up my night classes. And what was happening is my day class would stay longer than they should. Instead of going home, they'd hang out in my classroom. And my night classes were showing up early to hang out with me. And so I'd have my day class and my night classes staying later, coming early, and hanging around my server as I was trying to eat. And they were just hitting me with all of the questions that they had thought outside of the classroom. But these questions started morphing into, hey, Shaun, my kid at home was doing this. Have you any thoughts on that? And so I wasn't just doing computer system engineering stuff. I was then kind of like coaching adults in their own lives. And at some point during that process, I thought, wow, this is not what I ever thought I would do in my life when I was Tier 1. So that was the moment that I started realizing that I was coaching adults in things that weren't all about putting rounds downrange or blowing things up or whatever the case is. It was coaching the thing I was responsible for, but coaching things around my primary responsibility, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Julie, what about yourself?
Well, that would be easy for me. That's when Shaun quit coaching and somehow convinced me to take over the role about a year and a half ago. So that would be the formal step for coaching, for a cycling coach aspect. But prior to that, I've been in the fitness industry for 15, 20 years as a fitness instructor. So that would be my initial introduction to coaching per se from a group perspective. And then from there, I transitioned into some personal training and then ultimately now into cycling specifically for coaching.
Absolutely. Travis, how about yourself?
Um, Kind of like Shaun. I mean, I think in the military, you're kind of a de facto coach as once you're put into a leadership role and you have to get youngsters to perform at a certain level. You're kind of unknowingly coaching them through stuff. But I think I didn't really realize that that was happening until I started to get feedback from subordinates on, like being thankful for my mentorship, or, just basically saying thanks for the help. Then you kind of put two and two together, that you're actually having an impact on people more than just, steady press on the trigger. Like it's beyond just the technical detail of coaching somebody through a movement or a skill, but actually having an impact on their thought processes. I think is when once you make that realization, you're kind of like, hey, there's something to mentorship, like real coaching and mentorship. The military describes coach, train, mentor. That's a big thing at least in the American Armed Forces, that they use in leadership schools and stuff. And I think once you realize that you're actually impacting people is when, at least for me, that's when I kind of made the connection that I'm a coach. I'm a coach. Never really intended it to happen. It just kind of did. And honestly, it's one of the most fulfilling parts of my life.
I like it. I like it a lot. Nako, what about yourself?
I was going to say, Travis mirrored my exact answer. Coming onto the police department, it's something that you don't really seek out, but then others saw, I guess they saw some different qualities in me and hit me up with proposals of, hey, I think you'd be a really good member, a union delegate for our organization, where you navigate people through career survival, legal problems, complaint procedures, critical incidents, and what have you. So if someone's asking me, hey, I think you would like this, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to go for it. And then other opportunities such as becoming a department certified peer support counselor. Someone hit me up about that, and just like Travis, is super rewarding to be able to get those skills and give them back and help people navigate our life and our profession. So that the term coach wasn't really, it's not something on the business card, but it's things that I really love doing. And I think the first half of my career was more like self-serving in a way of wanting to arrest every gang member and parolee that I could get my hands on. And then the second part of my career was from seeing other mentors and becoming a department supervisor, was trying to give back to the organization and the next generation, and take all the lessons I learned from others and myself and things that I failed at, and trying to put that to the next gen so they don't follow in my footsteps and step on those landmines per se. So been extremely gratifying, and it's really an honor to be able to serve the community and to serve your organization at the same time. So
Absolutely. Before we get deeper into that, I just want to hit these up real quick. Cody just joining us. Good to see you. Steve Wilson, Morning Collective. And then Winterstorm, thanks everyone for the stellar answers. Absolutely. I had a question based on the answers that you guys give me. It sounds very much like you never really just take the, like, oh, I'm just going to be a coach now and run off with it. It seems like you are bestowed the title of coach and you just kind of realize it. Shaun, you're shaking your head. What's up?
I am shaking my head. I look at this panel and I think that it was gifted to all of us to some degree, either on a rapid turnover or on a long-term process. But it was all gifted to us through time. And the reason I'm shaking my head when you're saying, it sounds like coaching is ... For this panel it is, but it isn't for the internet. And the reason that I say that is because just before I hopped into my live IG chat, I was quickly catching up on my social media. And of course, we all get hit with advertisements. And it just seems that at this moment right now, maybe it's just my feed, maybe it's everyone's feed, I don't know. But, every 10th post, I'm seeing an ad that is some kid who looks like he's got about that much life experience, who's pitching a 21-day course about how to become a mega coach, mega leader, mega athlete, mega whatever. And the verbiage usually sounds something like this. 6 months ago, I was burned out and lost, and I didn't know what to do. But now I've got a 21-day course that will help you become a mega champion in life, ... etc. And so there are people that are categorizing themselves as coaches at 18 years of age, or at any age with no life experience, we'll call it, to be able to proclaim that they're a coach. And so I look at this panel. I know how long I coached Julie. It was at least a decade. And Nako and Trav, you know, like, you guys have been in the game so long that you could write books about how to do it properly within your industries. And so that's experience gained, hard life lessons that turn us into wisdom-based or experience-based coaches. And so, yeah, that can happen. But what can also happen is someone does a one-day course, gets a certificate that's called Mega Coach, and now they're out there on the interwebs pimping themselves as, hey, come on, I'll sort your life out because I've got a certificate. And so I think that there's some coaching out there that is inappropriate.
Yeah, for sure. Nako, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it as necessarily a bad thing, but as a consumer, if you're out there, you definitely have to do your homework. And, you know, maybe an 18-year-old could be a good coach for a 13-year-old. So they have some experience. It's limited. I try to be the optimist. So, you know, yeah, it's
That was very optimistic.
try to help out those 18-year-olds. I mean, hey, I mean, if you're an 18-year-old and you're on that path, I mean, more power to you. I mean, I was throwing rocks through windows and doing all types of nefarious stuff at 18. That's the last thing I was thinking of, really, is coaching others and being a leader. So good on you. And you know what? I just think of myself, even at my, going at 30 years in law enforcement, and I have a lot to learn. So it's a lifetime of learning. So even if you're 18, just get the ball rolling and just keep on building to that resume. Keep living a life of service. So I think everyone has something to add and everyone has something to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Julie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends who you're coaching, to both Shaun and Nako's point. So, I mean, you can't be trying to coach someone who wants to go to the Olympics or a world event if you just started coaching 20 days ago. So, I mean, there's a mix. You need to have the life experience and have experienced some of the challenges that the athlete that you're coaching is going to perhaps face. So that's one part of it. And then, I mean, you do need to have the education, whether it's formal or you've just learned yourself, behind you. So it really depends. But I think you've got to have experience. I feel that is key. Whatever you're coaching, you need to have some boots on the ground, so to speak, for whatever you're going to be passing on for your advice to your athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis, what do you think?
Well, there's two types of coaches. I think there's people who coach, because they truly want to help other people do well. And then there's other people who coach because they want to be seen as the coach, as the one, the person with the answer. And those two can both be effective. And I think as I guess, for lack of a better term, a client or a learner, you'd have to just kind of decide which one of those you want to follow. I have the same, I guess, I don't know, angst about when I see Instagram coaches out there teaching everybody what it's like to be in whatever tactical scenario it might be. Especially in the gun world, it's like it's really ridiculous with the amount of I mean, I'm old now, so I would say all these rookies out there trying to tell everybody how it's going to be with very minimal experience. That's, it's not how you gain wisdom, in my opinion. I think wisdom, Shaun hit that also, is like kind of one of the key components to coaching. And that comes with not only the education that's required, the technical aspect of whatever you're doing, but also, the experience. You don't get to really know what you're doing until you failed at it, kind of, you know, more than the average guy has tried, you know, and you're able to see others about to make the same mistakes that you once made, so you can prevent that and then steer them down a path of success, you know, in any skill, you know. And really it's about, to me, being a coach is just about seeing the best in other people, you know. I was always pretty good at whatever we were doing, you know, on the range, you know, physical aspect, everything like that. I was never the best. I was above average, but I recognize that I have an ability to see other people doing things, and where they just need a little bit right here. And that's the secret sauce that gets them over the top, you know. And I've been able to kind of capitalize on that through my military career and after. So, you know, to me, it gives me just, it makes me giddy almost to see one of my athletes succeed, you know.
Absolutely. Now I got a quick comment here from Cody. He says, that's because your preparation met opportunity, in his opinion. May have a sliver of luck, but you were all ready and raised to the occasion, or risen to the occasion, whichever you want to go with. Any thoughts on that before we move on to the next question, or you guys happy with where we're sitting?
Oh, I love Narco's optimism. I love it. And I want to encourage every 18-year-old out there to try to make a difference, for sure. While at the same time, I want to encourage all the other 18-year-olds who are looking for a coach to be more careful on who they select. And so the reason I say that, and man, if I was 18 and I wanted to be a coach, I wouldn't want old Shaun to be throwing me under the bus like I don't know how to coach. Maybe I'd be able to coach a little bit. But here's the importance of what I'm trying to say right now. That our generation, an older generation, I'll call it, didn't have the internet, didn't have TikTok, didn't have the flashy sounds and the flashy colors to make someone super appealing on social media. And so I look at this panel and I think there are people with a tenth of the experience of this panel that look like they've got 1,000% more experience than this panel. That is the danger of social media. None of us are probably very good at it. And certainly, like, if I tried to represent my body of work through social media, I'd have to use stick figures because I'm not very good with social media. But there are folks out there that have, again, 1/10 of this wisdom of this panel. And it looks like a James Cameron clip of their abilities in coaching. It's Hollywood good. And so the imagery of today, the social media, not manipulation, but the representation on social media today can really pump up someone's non-existent resume and detract from coaches that are out there that are not quieter, but just are not as familiar with social media. Well, what do you guys, and Julie, sorry, what do you all think of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to go to Travis. What do you think?
I agree 1,000,000%. There's, I think Gen X kind of we're the generation that kind of got exposed to both worlds. Like, you know, growing up, we didn't have cell phones until we were well into adulthood, you know. So knowing how to manipulate the algorithms and things like that are a challenge for us, you know. And also, we grew up in an era where kind of being humble was, you know, like kind of forced upon you, really. Like, you know, when I came up in the military, you know, it was quiet professionalism was the moniker. You know, you stay quiet, work hard, be humble, and crush everything, you know, and just let your reputation speak for itself. It doesn't need help from you. Well, nowadays, if you're not out there vocally telling everybody how cool you are, like, you're just going to be pushed to the side and like completely disregarded, especially when it comes to social media and clickbait and all that stuff. So it is a learning curve for us. And probably it's a learning curve for the people who are looking for coaches also, because they're going to make mistakes in that and seeking out a coach. You know, there's the outlier who's going to find the perfect coach the first time. You know, it's like, you know, finding your match on some dating app the first go, and there's the vast majority of people are not going to have that experience. So, you know, testing the waters and things, and knowing really what you want to achieve through your coach, and knowing where the coach fits into your program, your training philosophy, that's also part of it. But it's definitely a learning experience for all of us involved.
Absolutely. And just so you guys know, I met my wife on an online dating platform. First woman I tried.
Did you?
There you go.
Absolutely, yep.
Bam.
And,
The
it was
outlier.
pretty good.
Congrats.
I was actually in the field too when we were chatting online. It was pretty good. Julie, what do you think?
Oh, that's cool. Little story about your wife. I like it. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Shaun and Travis said. Certainly, you know, there's some stuff out there that looks pretty flashy and people are skilled when they're not. So I'm of the similar mindset. I'm not really one to say, hey, I'm a coach, I'm awesome, like come and sign up with me. That's not really my scene per se. So I think really at the end of the day, social media is big, but I feel like still word of mouth is still going to be important. So, I mean, as you build your clientele, then other people who train with you will share their experience, and that will perhaps give you more clientele. So I guess there is a bit of a balance, but again, I'm not really one even to push my services face to face. I mean, some of my clients, I think a year and a half or so ago, we met up with some people riding, and the one girl was saying, "Oh, you know, I don't have a coach. I'm not coaching with anyone right now." And I didn't say anything, but my husband piped up, "Hey, well, did you know Julie's starting to coach now?" I mean, I just didn't say anything, and sure enough, she got in touch with me that day and signed up, I mean, a day or two later. So I guess there is a balance, but I think at the end of the day, if you are a good coach, you have integrity, you set a good example, then you know your coaching will show through, hopefully. But again, you do have to get on the social media game too if you want to try to keep up with the youngsters. So
Yeah, that's tough. Nako, you want to run us out?
Yes. Uh, take things at face value. Just because somebody has 10 million followers or, portrays this whole beautiful existence, they're just a human like everybody else. They have flaws. They're messy like we are. They're seeking answers too. And we just don't see it. But that's okay. If they're 80% of the time they're doing it right, don't throw all your eggs in the basket. And if they do go off the path and say 20% of whatever they're espousing and you don't agree with, that's fine. You could there's still quality. And on the flip side of that, just because someone isn't a coach and they're living a different lifestyle that you're not maybe in accordance with, that doesn't mean that you can't learn something from them. I'm a strong believer you could learn from everybody. And some of the most important lessons I've learned in little snippets of conversation and interactions I've had were with people that they're on the street that were homeless, that had, relatively zero possessions, but their wealth was in their mind and experience and the love that they had for others. So just because they don't have any followers, they're not on social media, or they don't have a title, keep your eyes and ears open, and you'll be surprised at what you can learn. And like you said about a certificate, is just a piece of paper. It's all about what you've learned and how you put that out to the universe. So yeah, that's what I say.
Absolutely. Now I got a couple more comments here, and then if you guys are good, I'll move on to the second question. Before any other thoughts before I hit these though?
I do. I have one more dilemma that I'm going to propose to the panel, and this is for people who are listening as well. Julie knows this. I never spent $1 on marketing ever, and I turned away more people than I accepted. That was just my style. If people found me, it's because they had to dig. It's not because I was putting it out there. And so that's one approach. Another approach, of course, is to start spending money on marketing and to start putting yourself out there in a really not forceful way, but a concerted effort to grow your footprint through we'll call it social media. It feels inauthentic to me, but I know that that's kind of the game nowadays. And by game, I mean the game of trying to do good for people. I'm not talking about trying to rip people off or steer them in the wrong direction. The game nowadays is to represent yourself in social media in a way that kind of authentically demonstrates yourself, but is still putting yourself out there maybe more than you're comfortable with, at least more than I'm comfortable with. Do you think that there's a line in the sand that as coaches it becomes inauthentic, or no?
That's a good question. Knock, I'm going to start with you.
The first thought that came into my mind is I like seeing the fails of people that do really good, or that they're high performers. And when you see them, struggling with whatever it is that they're portraying, I love that the most. I think that's the most memorable. So I try to keep that cognizant when I'm putting out little snippets of things, like, don't put the highlights, put the lowlights in there. More people are usually failing than succeeding. And if they're saying, oh, wow, this guy that I look up to that's doing it right, he's getting it wrong. Okay, that's not a bad thing. That's okay. He's not perfect. So show the flaws, where do the opposite. Everyone's putting on the filters and this and that. Like, yeah, show me the dirt, show me the grit. That's the authentic thing. I mean, show me the black eyes. That's what I'm attracted to. I was always, some of my mentors were just like anti-heroes of flawed individuals, but they can pick themselves up off the ground, whether it's, people like G. Gordon Liddy, Richard Nixon, Jimmy Page, people that overcame huge resistance and persevered despite that. That's what I'm looking for. So show me the cracks in the pavement and then how you fixed it after that. So
I just before we move on to the next answer, Nako, I have to ask you this specifically because I'm curious as to what formed that within you, because you're a representation of a certain demographic in my mind anyway. And so I saw you recently on your social media feed, you were at UFC, you were hanging out with Dana White, and you were doing all of that thing. Anytime you want to go back there to Boston and hang out with Dana White, I can make time. You came up in a way in a neighborhood, in a city with people that are of a certain character, a certain sort of style of human, and that probably helped formed who you are, and that's formed your sense of how to relate with people and how to love the anti-hero and how to all of these things. But I would say that's perhaps a regional result rather than that's common throughout the entire country, as it were. And so do you think your culture formed your view on this answer, or since you've moved out to the left coast or the west coast, do you think that's shaped your, what was it?
it was definitely a combination of both. The foundation of it was definitely my father. He was a airborne Vietnam Ranger, and he just had a plethora of friends and associates from all over the spectrum. Priests, gangsters, Hell's Angels, and everything in between. High-profile politicians. So I was constantly bombarded with stories and lessons and failures and everything in between. And I just learned to accept people for what they are. And everyone has something to bring to the party. And just because they had a certain past or they subscribe to a certain notion, that doesn't mean I can't learn from them. Doesn't mean I have to accept what they say or want to follow that path, but I could learn from them. So I've always been, I was a solo child, so I was always a great listener. I didn't have much feedback to throw back. So I didn't have brothers and sisters, so I would just sit there and soak up the knowledge. So yeah, growing up in New York City, I mean, we're exposed to so much. It was such a dense city, and everyone's on top of each other and from all walks of life. And then when I came out here to Los Angeles, I got involved, had a lot of friends that went through recovery. So former drug addicts, alcoholics, and everything else in between. And I saw how they gave back to the community and how they brought their life back from after burning it down. So musicians and all types of people. So that's my foundation of forgiveness and living a life of service and coming from like a Catholic Judeo-Christian background of reconciliation and the underdog. I just always a fan of the underdog. So being in law enforcement, we're surrounded by people that screwed up their lives. So if I can give back, maybe 10%, help someone out, that's mission accomplished for me.
Awesome. Thank you.
I like it. Travis, you got any thoughts on Shaun's original question?
He asked where was the line in the sand between authenticity and
Marketing.
Yeah. And I kind of got stuck on that, and it was just like going around. And I think there's a realization that if you're going to coach for a career, obviously you're going to have to make a living. That's a thing. So you'll probably fight with that a little bit. But once it becomes more important to make money, if you make a decision that like, well, this is the right thing, but I need to do this in order to make money. If you make that decision, now you've stepped over the line. Right. And now you're no longer authentic. You're just in it for the money part. And now you've stopped being an authentic coach. And now you're one of those negative people we talk about that's in it for the money and not for the betterment of people.
Yeah. So that's a good line to draw. Absolutely. Julie, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a bit of a balance to Nako's point as well. You're not going to come across as being authentic if you just show all the wins and none of the losses. So, people get tired. You can't just keep putting all your podium shots up there, or riding on trails that are awesome and sunshine. You have to also share, the hard times, the mud, the dirt, the grit, all the things that got you there, and the losses, and share those, the times that you screwed up or what you learned, so you can pass those on to the world, basically. And I think also if you're just doing it to make money, to Travis's point, then that will come through as well. So, I mean, I think there's a balance. You may want to provide some things for free, or advice or tips here and there at some point. I mean, you can't give everything away for free if that's your career, but there is a balance of sharing the information, the wins and the losses.
Absolutely. Now I got a couple comments here I just want to hit on, and then we'll jump into the second question here, unless there's any other thoughts. Pretty good? Cool. Winterstorm jumps in. He says, wisdom is the experience of doing it wrong, being humble enough to learn from it, and the perception to see it happening when someone else starts doing it, and the lack of ego to pass on that wisdom. A coach is wisdom used consistently over time to help someone achieve greater results than the coach attained. I think that's a very interesting thought. And then I got Salty Jinx jumps in. And he says, social media is a great tool for targeting a specific demographic or audience. That is 100% accurate. But if you neglect to seek those who demonstrate the true competencies in your field, it falls on you when you do reach your goals. And I feel a portion of the people seeking skills through online interaction only are either uncoachable or missing the point. And Flash draws attention just like a tank in the middle of the street. Yes, 100%. A tank would draw attention in the middle of the street. Any thoughts on any of that before we jump into the next question? Groovy?
I think,
okay. Give her.
In addition, wisdom also comes from doing it correctly, from doing it right. If you do things right repetitively and consistently, then you gain some wisdom from that as well. It's not fully from doing it wrong. I think doing things wrong repetitively, I don't think would be very challenging. But like when you make a mistake and then you change it and then change something and then you're successful and then you can build on that success and continue to be successful, then you gain wisdom through that as well as your mistakes.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Okay. Any other thoughts before we jump into the second question? Good. All right, let's roll. Here we go. We got one from Anne. Let's hit it up. There we go.
Good morning, collective. My name is Anne McEwen, and I'm a retired sergeant with the Ontario Provincial Police. I'm looking forward to September's discussion, but here's my question to the coaches. First, who was the most impactful and influential coach that you had in your life and why? And number two, Huberman Lab just put out, if we announce our goals it can undermine our progress. What's your thought on that?
That is a very good question. So I'm going to start with Julie. What do you think on both questions?
Okay, the first question, who was the most influential coach that I had? Well, that would be easy, would be Shaun. And why would that be? There he is, right there in front of us. Why? Because he made me work hard. I mean, he pushed me to levels that I never thought that I could do and challenged me and, basically didn't take any crap. So he was a good coach, pushed me hard, was a good leader, knew the game, put in the time, very experienced. And I remember when I wanted to get into the world of 24-hour solo racing, I initially started on a team. I was in Canmore, and that used to be the big 24-hour race for solos or teams. And back in the day, and I was there on a team, and my husband, he decided, well, I'm going to do this 24-hour solo. And Shaun was there racing as well, and happened to be around our pit. And I just thought, well, I'll watch my husband and see, if he survives, and maybe if it works out for him, I'll give it a shot. And I remember Shaun was around the pit, and it was, I think, Steve's last lap, and Shaun was around, and I just remember he grabbed him a bottle and he said, "Here you go. No need to get off your bike. It's all about improving your position now." And then I just remember thinking, hey, if I'm going to do this, he's the guy, that's the man that you need in your pit to keep you going. So that was, I think shortly after that, I reached out to Shaun and said, hey, I want to do a 24-hour solo. Can we meet up? So it was Shaun for sure. And then the other piece was, should you announce your goals because they might undermine them? That was the other question.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting question. I don't think that they do undermine it. I think it makes you accountable. If you announce, I want to be a world champion, I want to win this event, I think that it just makes you accountable, and you've announced, to the world or what have you, where you want to go. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that and undermines it. Of course, there's all the levels to the game of how you're going to get there. So you can't just look at the end goal. You're going to have to try to break that down in terms of how you're going to achieve that goal. But I don't think it undermines it. I think it strengthens the goal and makes you accountable that you want to achieve whatever that goal is for yourself.
I like that. Nako, what do you think?
Definitely the person that had the most impact on me as a coach and a mentor was for sure my dad, my old man. Like I said, he was a U.S. Army Ranger, so he had leadership qualities up to yin yang, and just always brings out the best in me. Still does. I always look up to him as my hero. And then as far as Huberman goes, got to see him live not that long ago, and amazing speaker. Love what he's doing, and he's impacted my life as far as like getting sleep dialed in and everything. So check out his podcast for sure. And I know there's been, I think Jocko just did a podcast talking about throwing out, the intentions and goals and what have you. And so I think there's pros and cons to both. What I like about throwing out the intentions is inspiring others. Like just today, we did a little event where we did like a rock over a bridge out here in Los Angeles, and someone mentioned scuba diving. So it's like, if I throw out, hey, my goal this year is to become scuba certified, and the downside, hey, if I don't make it happen, do I look like the idiot? Maybe not. Maybe it bums me out and I get driven down to a hole and stop doing things, but maybe it works out. But I think more of the intention of putting it out that I like is when someone mentions that, they're like, oh yeah, you know what? I always wanted to do that too. Can I do that with you? How do I do it? Set me up. And I think inspiring others. I know I get heavily inspired by friends and people I admire. And if they put that out there, either I get inspired by it or I could help them. Like, hey, I've got a great friend that's, scuba certified. I could do it for free for veterans and what have you. And then I could link them up. So for me, I love when people put it out there, or if I put it out there and I could bring others along with me. That's a win. And if you fail, oh well, just give it another shot. And like I said, it's all about the cracks. Cool, you didn't do it this year. You put out that you wanted to write a book and you just did a chapter. That's when you have a good, solid friendship with people. That's when they'll give you that call. Hey, you put out that you were doing this. What's the progress of that? Oh, you know what? I haven't made it happen. Okay, how could I help you? What could we do to get you past the finish line on that? So having good groups of friends that keep you accountable is awesome. So I see more pros and cons of throwing things out there.
Interesting. Travis, what do you think?
As far as coaching mentorship, it's impossible to pin it down to one, through my life. Obviously my father, my grandfathers, both all military guys. And, they had a huge impact on my life growing up. But bringing it into like the actual, like coaching training sphere, through my military career, went to so many specialized schools, and kind of one of the things that at least the U.S. Army does in their special operations schools, most of them have like a few civilian guys. They're like the old dudes that, they used to be operators, and now they've gotten the dream job, right, where they get to work in free fall school for the next 30 years, and they just become, they're already sky gods, but they've been doing it for a quarter of a century, so they have such a wealth of experience. And going to several of those schools and seeing those old guys through those training evolutions, for me, it always kind of stuck out to me that they were a little bit more relaxed than the active duty guys. The active duty guys were always like just a little bit more gruff and like, you're going to do it or you're going to fail, and I don't care. And, and then the old guy'd be like, hey, come here a minute, man. Let me tell you something. Let me give you this little tidbit of wisdom, and you're going to breeze right through this stuff. And, those guys' ability to do that, to actually tell you to like, hey, when you're holding your rifle, just pull your elbows down a little bit, and you're like, that's it. Like, that's it. That's going to get, yeah, that's it. And they have that wisdom over those years of institutional knowledge and just being able to do it. That kind of really like stuck me as like, those guys all have that little something special, and that comes with tenure, being there and doing it for a long time. Also kind of later in my military career, I was put in charge of a school, and I was basically the senior and the NCOIC of a school in SWIC. And I was kind of retraining our cadre of the school on not just the technical skills of what we were teaching, but actually how to teach. And we had a department in SWIC called Sept, which was the Special Operations Cognitive Performance Center. And there were several people that worked there. One of them is named Dave Rizzuti, Detachment 1 on Instagram, if you're interested. He had a big impact on me because he helped me basically devise a curriculum that was teaching operators how to actually teach, and we veered away a little bit from this stereotypical military like training and focused on success and like the cognitive portions of actually teaching people. And it was very, very eye-opening to me as a military guy, because I had been 20 years doing it the military way, and he kind of brought a different spin on it, and it really opened my eyes a lot. And then it led me down the road of so many books of reading, but it's been awesome, and I've taken a lot of the lessons that he taught me and applied those to different areas of my life, and obviously to my coaching, and it's helped a great deal.
Now, what about the idea of putting
the
your thoughts out there all
goals?
the time? Yeah.
I don't think you can perform at a higher level without having a goal. You have to have some kind of like higher purpose to achievement if you're going to perform better. If I say, hey, I want to go to the CrossFit Games as an athlete, within this time frame, then you have something to shoot forward towards. If you just say, I'm going to go to CrossFit gym every day and work out, then there's no, chronological purpose to what you're doing. You're just going train to train. Like, I don't know how you better yourself through that. You have to have some sort of goal, even if that goal is just to work out every day. That's goal number one. Like, just train every day, then that's a goal. And you have to at least say it to yourself in order to meet it, and better yourself. So I'm not sure that I agree too much. I think maybe, if you're, I don't know how it would detract from you, if your focus is just the goal and you become frustrated, but I think there's a myriad of other problems that we got to deal with, like mentally, to make you, realize that you're making a mistake by just focusing on the goal. Every one of the coaches, like Julie, like as soon as you asked her, she immediately broke down goals into like several steps, and like in true coaching fashion, she had already like a little foundational plan of what she's going to do to achieve the answer in your question. So you have to have goals in order to better yourself.
Yeah,
that's my view.
Absolutely. Shaun, you want to round us out on this?
Yeah, first of all, in the sense of coaches that stand out for me, I don't have a good, clear answer because I've just been around too many. I think at my age, I've just been exposed to some amazing people that it'd take the rest of the podcast to call them all out. So what I'd like to do is break it down into more of a model. One would be my people who were coaching me actively within institutions of my several careers. I got exposed to some great coaching, and contrary to great coaching, I got exposed to some bad coaching. And I think that's an important subject because you have to be able to contextualize what good and bad looks like in order to make determinations moving forward on how you want to proceed as a good or bad coach. So institutionally, I had lots of good coaches that I can't call out specifically, but I'd like to compare that institutional coaching to athletes. My athletes coached me, or anyone that I worked with, not just athletes, but within other organizations or institutions or schools or whatever. The people that I was working on behalf of, or with, or for, we'll call it, they were coaching me how to be a better coach. That interactive two-way highway of me coaching them, their feedback, and me modifying against their feedback, that's them coaching me if I'm paying attention. And so working with Julie for a decade and a bit, she was teaching me to be a better coach through her being an active member of her own coaching trajectory. I think there's lots of different ways to set up your coaching style or your coaching platform or your coaching empire, for lack of a better term. And if you're coaching from the white high tower and coaching down to the masses, you're probably not getting much feedback up to the ivory tower. So you kind of got to be down there in the mix. You got to be in there in the game with the people that you're playing the game with as your athletes or the people that you're working on behalf of. By being in the mix, you can then be coached by the people that you're working for. And the second question in respect to Huberman, I'm a huge fan of the Huberman podcast. I call him out from time to time as go check him out because he's legit, obviously. So in his podcast, I haven't listened to the podcast where he talks about the overarching goals in the future may be somewhat detrimental, maybe to a minor degree, on maybe doing it the best way. I'm not going to say I disagree with Huberman. That's just not how I think of things. What I do think of in this regard is I stay ready. And so every day I'm good to go in whatever I'm going to go into in the future. And so I stay ready in life, whatever that means to anyone out there. And then when someone says to me, like if Nako says, hey, I was thinking of doing my advanced scuba diving. What do you think of that? Hey, I was thinking of maybe becoming a world champion in javelin. I suck at javelin, but I'm in. Like, I think that it's the inspiration of putting not your dreamy goal out there that is unobtainable, though that's okay. I think setting out ideas or possibilities for yourself that you're really, really gonna commit to, whether you achieve them or not. That's the most important part to me, because the distinction between putting a goal out there, like the boy who cried wolf, the folks who put out these constant goals but don't cross the start line. After a while, it forms a pattern of the boy who cried wolf, and then it's a detriment if someone keeps putting out these goals that they never start on. And so I think that there's, for some folks, it could be a negative, but for me, when I set my trajectory on I'm going to become a world champion someday, well, I just start marching towards it. And whether I ever become one or not is almost immaterial, because I'm in the game and I'm churning towards an outcome that pleases me. The journey, the path, the day-to-day pleases me. Whether I achieve the big gold medal or not, actually sometimes that's hardly my interest. But the journey that takes me towards it, that's my main focus. That's loving on life for me.
Absolutely. I think to clarify, I guess, a little bit, Hirun was talking about the fact of when you declare your goals to others, and then you kind of get the, yeah, man, awesome, you should totally do that. So you get a little dopamine strike or dopamine hit, and then you never actually do it.
Yeah, no.
So that's, I think that's where that's coming from. But now I have another couple comments here, a couple questions. Any thoughts before we move on from where we are? Very good. Okay. So we have, let's see here. This will be a good one. I don't know if we have time for the third video question, but this is a really great way to kind of finish off the show. KH jumps in here. He says, institutional knowledge versus world knowledge. Which one affects coaching more? Or are there different stages when these knowledge bases are used? I think that's a great question. I'm going to start with Nako. What do you think?
It's a tough one. I'm trying to think of how to break that down in my brain. I'm thinking more of street knowledge, book smart and street smart type of thing. If I could break that down to like caveman terms. And
yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm just a high school graduate. What do I know? But I think it's great to have a both. I mean, don't be a one-trick pony, and you need that real world knowledge, and then it's good to on the side to break out that book every now and then and find out what happened before. What's the institution? A big history buff, so by learning history, we can predict our future. So that's a tool that I rely upon. Everything, we're just humans. Everything that's going to happen has happened before. Usually, it's just distilled or in a different form, or it has a different lens. So don't be afraid to step into the academic arena or want to better yourself through other means and whatever you've seen in front of you. Like I said, we can learn from everyone and we can learn from everything. And we're living right now in the information age. I mean, you could teach yourself everything right now, how to speak another language, how to play every instrument, cook whatever meal, and you just have to be thirsty and get after it. So do it all from books, people, computers, everything. Don't stop learning to the day you die.
I love that. Best answer ever. Just give her. Julie, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Got to give her for sure. I would say that's a great question. I think, I don't know that one affects one over the other. They're both quite important. I think world knowledge definitely is key. I mean, from a coaching perspective for cycling athletes, you've got to be in the ring. You've got to do the races. You have to experience the wins, the losses, what went well, what didn't. So you can pass that on as a coach to your athletes for them to learn and get better. But then there's times when you've got to get the science in there. So if they're having issues with nutrition, anything science-based, sleep, recovery protocols, then you may have to get your science on. So whether that's, book smart or just research you've done, but that again could be research that you've actually done on yourself. So that also comes back to world knowledge. So I think they both play a role, and it depends on what information you need to pass on to your athletes to help them achieve their goals. So it might be a balance of both, depending on how you're trying to get them to achieve their best.
I like that a lot. Travis, what do you think?
I agree with both of them. Are obviously like super important. But I think you have to have some real world knowledge in order to adjust your coaching and achieve success. Like institutional knowledge, it's like if I think back to my lifetime in the military, growing up and like learning how to shoot, I must have heard the phrase front sight post, front sight post, front sight post, front sight post, front sight post about 16 trillion times, and maybe come up with something else, man. That institutional knowledge, it's obvious. It's not working. Like you have to have some kind of experience level that kind of, I don't know, it sparks that institutional knowledge into actual performance. You can have the knowledge, but until you have the understanding of how to turn that knowledge into actual performance of a skill, then it doesn't really work. Kind of another example, going back to military times, like, when I came in, the last real conflict that the United States had to draw from was Vietnam, and we learned from all those era guys of, how to take care of business. And then when the GWAT started, a lot of those things didn't really translate very well to where we're doing business in the current time. So, those first couple rotations, like guys were learning hard lessons, and then, because of who they were, they're immediately bringing them back to the schoolhouse and like kind of reformulating the plan. But that real world knowledge is necessary in order to kind of take the next step. So it's what's more important, like air or water? Like you're going to die without either one. It's not something that you can just choose what's more important. Like you have to have both of them to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, you want to round us out on this?
Yeah, sure. I'm target locked on Nako's example of the caveman scenario. And it made me think of institutional knowledge as everyone sitting inside the cage. World knowledge is stepping outside of the cave. And you can learn a lot from everyone in the cave. You can learn how to do hieroglyphics, you can learn how to whatever. But you still haven't got a fire yet in the cave. But if you go wander the world, maybe you'll find someone who's burning the first fire on the planet. And then you take a fire back to the cave, and now the institutional knowledge is just increased. That's the way I see coaching. Clients are maybe in the cave, and my job is to go out there and bring back fire to some degree, or a torch. And so my job in coaching, in respect to Julie as the example, is I need to be able to pass on the institutional knowledge that I have, and part of my institutional knowledge has to be world knowledge, like next year you're going to be racing in the desert. No big deal. I've raced in the desert a pile of times, and these are the things that you need to know. The following year you're going to be racing up in the high mountains. No big deal. I've been there, done that. And so your world knowledge is what establishes not just confidence from the people that you're working with, them understanding that you've been there, done there, got the t-shirt. You also need to be able to translate it in a more three-dimensional model rather than just spell the word desert. You have to be able to discuss the nuance of the desert when you're speaking with whoever you're working with as a client or as an athlete or someone that you're coaching. So I guess my simple answer is that maybe for someone who can only choose one or the other, not as a coach, but as a client, the client should start thinking a little bit more about the institutional knowledge. And then as you're thinking about that institutional knowledge and you're thinking about getting a coach, that's where you'll get your world knowledge. And through the process as a client, you can combine those two things together and then the client decides which is most important to them. For me, as the coach, I can't separate the two. They're so joined at the hip that I can't choose one.
Yeah. I'm think what I'm picking up from you guys is like it's important to understand dogma. It's important to understand the institutional knowledge, but it's important not to be dogmatic, if that kind of makes sense. Now we are just about at time, so first off, thank you very much, because this has been enlightening to say the least. And I got to say, I'm super excited for the rest of this week. This is going to be I can't even put a value on it. Like the sheer amount of coaches that we have and the sheer amount of knowledge, sheer amount of wisdom that is going to be passed on throughout this week about with some of the questions we have here. People would pay probably are in the range of hundreds of thousands of dollars for the next 20 plus coaches over the next 6+ hours of actual information. It's crazy, and we're doing it for free every day here. Like, it's pretty awesome. So let's get some final thoughts, and we'll work our way down the panel. Julie, I'm going to start with you. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think this is an awesome initiative that you guys are doing, this coaching week, and I hope that people jump on board and learn what everyone has to say. It's been awesome. I've learned lots today, and I look forward to being part of it and learning myself. So I think people should jump on board. There's always something to learn, whether you are a coach yourself or an athlete or you just want to get better. There's going to be something for everyone this week. So I hope everyone takes the opportunity to jump in.
Absolutely. Travis, what do you think? Final thoughts?
Yeah, something that we maybe, I don't know if we just haven't got around to it yet, but like talking about coaching specifically and being a good coach, one of the skills I think that is very necessary is in knowing your athletes or your soldiers or your teammates or whoever you're coaching, right? And knowing kind of what they're capable of now, what they have the potential to be capable of, and really understanding what that is for yourself as a coach. Because sometimes I think you have to entertain delusions of grandeur, right, on the part of your athletes or whatever, and just like, yeah, man, that's good, that's a good idea. Yeah, world's next year. You've never trained before. We got it. We can do this, Or also, and probably more important, is some people don't really have confidence in themselves yet, and they think that they can't do anything. And I owned a CrossFit gym for a long time. I had a lot of especially older athletes that thought they were over the hill. Hey, I'm just here to like stay healthy. And it's like, hey man, that's great. That's a great idea. And the amount of times that I saw someone do their first pull-up in their life and they're over 50 years old is a lot. Okay. So like understanding what people are capable of and kind of what they expect is important, but you have to know that probably a little bit more than they actually know that, and you have to apply it in a smart way so that, you're entertaining their vision, but you've got your vision as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nako, what do you think? Final thoughts?
Yes, I was thinking about that as well in regard to when I'm trying to teach someone or coach someone through something. I say that this is my way instead of the way. To go back to what Travis was saying. Whatever we're learning now is going to evolve. Things are going to change in 10 years. So whatever we think is the appropriate way probably will change. And so when I'm trying to teach them something, I've said, this is a way. This is not the way. You might have a better way of doing it. You tell me if that's so. And if this doesn't apply to you, or you could adapt it or modify it, go for it. Don't get stuck into that dogma like we were talking about. And then one also how to define what your success is. Is it success versus being successful? When I'm going through a jiu-jitsu class or helping somebody out, if I'm showing them 100% of the move or whatever technique or any type of platform that we're going on, if you could retain 1% of that, great. If you could retain all of it, great, even better. 10%, 15%, that's success for me. Are you better than before you came into this class? And if that's a yes, just by I moved a notch a little bit, a needle, that you're on your way. So don't go into something expecting you're going to have it down 100% of the time. So learn how to really define your success. And lastly, if I could steal a line from one of my brothers, each one, teach one.
I like it. Shaun, final thoughts?
Yeah. So I think, without repeating what everyone's just said, my job as a coach is to understand better than the individual in front of me where they're going to be in a year. If they're engaging with me to make themselves better, whatever that means to them, or more successful, whatever that means to them, or become a world champion, which they may never be, but whatever that means to them, whatever it is that they've got in their head, that they approach me and say, could you help me with this? I know better than they do what that's going to look like in a year. That's why they're engaging me. All I need them to do is show up with passion. You don't have to show up with the answers. You don't have to show up with the schedule. You don't have to show up with anything other than passion. If you remain passionate throughout the process with a good coach, you'll become the version of yourself that you deserve to be by putting in the work passionately, by wanting to be better a year from now. Show up with that attitude and be prepared to become a different human being. That is what pays me back as a coach. I don't care about the money. I care about another person becoming more awesome. I won't take a photo of them on a podium as my payback. I'll just get to nod at them and think, that was my time well spent.
Outstanding. Yep, outstanding. Now, we're going to hit these last couple comments here. Cody jumps in here, says, give her Becky buys. Absolutely. Carl says, thank you, collective crew. Nako commenting, I still have a problem with desert versus dessert. And I got a quick, easy one for you. If one tastes like sand, that's the desert. Cody says, thank you, everyone, for your time. Great talk, Winterstorm. Thanks to all the coaches. Nako jumping in. Thank you for listening, engaging, and Salty Jinx, what a brilliant start to the topic. Thank you for your returns and your time. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, all the panel. This has been an amazing conversation. I can't even begin to describe how epic this week is going to be. So as we all learn more about ourselves, as we all build what we know, we can grow into who we're meant to be. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see you all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.